Welcome back to the Health Revival Show. Today we have Bria Gadd. She is a functional diagnostic practitioner, holistic health coach, and she is the period whisperer. So we're going to have fun today. We are going to dive into all things female hormones. You know, that's our jam. We love talking about metabolic health, and she does as well. So we're going to get into it today. If you are listening to this show, please share it, tag us, tag her on social media, tag us on social media so that we can get the word out. You all know, if you listen to the Health Revival Show, that we don't do advertising and we want to keep a good listening experience. But most importantly, we want to help women around the world. So make sure that if you're watching this online, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you are, leave a comment, leave a 5-star rating review, but share it out and tag us because we'd love to know that you're listening to the show. And with that said, welcome, Bria. Thank you so much for coming on the Health Revival Show and having Becca and I both as solo guests on your podcast. That was so much fun. We're excited to have you here, and we'll just have you introduce yourself and tell our listeners how you got into this world of functional nutrition.
Yeah, thank you both. It is so excited to see you both and spend this time here. And I just love the show. So I really do hope people go out and continue to follow and share your show because it's just provides so much value. So thank you for having me. And yeah, like the kind of the down and dirty of my story. I'm almost 44. I was running a business in like fitness and nutrition for a lot of years, really when I raised my babies who are now teenagers. And, at 37, for me, I remember thinking, I don't have everything figured out, but I definitely have my fitness and nutrition figured out. And that's when things started to shift. First, I saw it in my clients, right? A lot of our clients, well, for me, a lot of my clients are around my age, especially at that time in fitness. But I noticed first in them, like they're just weren't getting the same results. We're more tired. We're having worse menstrual cycles. And then it really started happening to me. It was like this initial kind of slow grade anxiety and changes in my cycle, things that I just continued to ignore. And it really culminated in, I'd say like unexplained, I always say undeserved weight gain. And I was less concerned about that, but I'm like, I thought I had this figured out. And all of a sudden I'm gaining weight and nothing had changed in my life. And then the real kicker for me was my sleep started getting interrupted. Like my digestion was wonky, my skin was wonky, all these things, but nothing bugged me the most until I just started waking up every night like clockwork in a sweat at 2 a.m. And that was what kind of drove me to my healthcare practitioner to, do the tests, do all the things. And she was really wonderful. But at the end of it, she was like, Bria, you're the picture of health. And I remember thinking, it was like a low moment. I remember thinking, like, if this is the picture of health at 37, like I don't know that I can do another 37 years like this. Like this, like, is it gonna it's not gonna get better. So it was a really tough moment, like both in my career, right? Because when we're making a career out of helping other people, it's like now I can't even help myself. But it was a big eye-opener moment where I was like, okay, I'm not gonna just wave the white aging flag here. I have to better understand what's going on. And I think the eye opener for me was really recognizing through, new research and through my own studying and healing my own body that as a woman, and I wasn't alone in this, I'd really ignored a lot of messages from my body and I didn't know much about my body as a woman. And that was really what kind of pivoted me into this more targeted area of helping women in the perimenopause years of 35 to 55 with better understanding their body and how to kind of become the CEO of it themselves, like be more in control of it.
All right, if you're dealing with water retention, you're waking up puffy, your ankles or your wrists are really swollen, or you can't get your rings off, and maybe you're even dragging throughout the day, no matter how much water you drink, there's actually a good chance that you're not actually hydrating properly.
Exactly, because water alone is not enough. You need electrolytes, you need sodium, potassium, magnesium, because those things actually pull water into your cells. Otherwise, you're basically just flushing it out and wondering why you're still tired, you're still bloated, and you're still sluggish.
But here's the thing, most electrolyte supplements out there aren't helping you in any way because a lot of them contain things like natural flavors, food dyes, and maltodextrin, which can irritate your gut. And these things can also spike your blood sugar when you're trying to heal.
That's why we both started using Buoy. It's super simple. There's trace minerals and electrolytes in liquid form. No flavors, no colors, no sugar, no sweeteners, and you squeeze it into whatever you are drinking: water, coffee, tea, smoothies, you name it.
And it's clinically backed by science too. So studies have shown that buoy helps you hydrate better, 64% better, in fact. And that's data coming from key blood and urinary markers, not just marketing fluff. And honestly, you can feel the difference. I've had many clients tell me their digestion's improved, they have less headaches, and they're better energy throughout the day.
And Buoy isn't just for people that go to the gym all the time and sweat a bunch. They actually offer a 35% lifetime discount for anyone that's struggling with chronic illnesses. Things like POTS, Hashimoto's, Crohn's disease, chronic migraines, and every autoimmune condition. They're really committed to making better hydration accessible to people who need it most.
I actually throw it in my coffee every morning because it's such an easy upgrade. You don't even taste it, but you're definitely going to notice if you miss it.
If you're tired of playing hydration roulette and want something that actually supports your body, you've got to try Buoy. It's honestly one of the simplest ways to feel better faster.
First of all, you don't look like you're 44 with
No.
teenagers, so amazing.
You're doing something right.
Thank you. I thought
You guys are watching. You definitely do not look 44. And you brought up a really good point, and then of course Becca can chime in here too. But so we're both going to be 37 this year, right?
That felt really old saying to someone at the pool this weekend. This guy asked me, little backstory. I was going off the diving board.
Mhm.
Fun fact, I used to be on the diving team.
Yay.
And the guy was like, I was like, it was like over 20 years ago that I did this. And he was like, well, how old are you? I was like, 37. God. It's like, why does that feel so old all of a sudden?
I appreciate that you bring that up because we have so many conversations on our podcast and we talk about this is mid 30s, even for some people, early 30s. Like, this is it. This is the season of shifting and changing. And while some women are still in childbearing years and still continuing to have children and even into the early 40s, that's cool. But at the same time, we know that this is the shift where things start to happen, or this is the season where things start to shift, however you want to say that. So I appreciate you bringing that into this conversation because I believe many of our listeners are going to be like, aha, I'm not crazy. Liz and Becca really are telling the truth when we're giving you the warnings that this is going to be signs and symptoms that you want to get ahead of. You want to be proactive with your health. So I just wanted to say those two things.
Yeah, I love that.
So you mentioned, I know kind of in our talk prep, you brought up the term health debt. And I think that this is something that so many women do not think about. And they blame perimenopause, they blame their 40s, they blame whatever as like this is why I feel it's my hormones. It's like, nah, girl, like you have been ignoring a lot of things that have probably been accumulating. So I'd love for you to talk about that concept of health debt and how a lot of people accumulate things. Like it's not Groundhog Day. Like you don't get a blank slate every day you wake up. Like things accumulate in the body. And so would love for you to expand on that concept of health debt and how so many women, I think in their 20s and in their 30s and then 40s, like things that they're doing are slowly wearing on their system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll preface it by just saying, I think we've really been taught to look at this hormonally shifting time or the retirement of our ovaries as like, oh no, I'm getting older and this and that, and there's nothing I can do about it. I really think this is like our body's like call to action. That's like, it's like a big pink highlighter coming out and like saying like, hey, now let's fix this stuff because at 35, 45, even 55, you have decades left to live your dreams for you. So let's fix it now before we get there. So I think it's actually a really cool gift and opportunity. And having a different perspective is helpful. But yes, understanding this concept of health debt, I think, is like the beginning of really learning about our body. And how I see it is that when the energy supply to our body no longer meets the energy demand, we shift into health debt. And what you were kind of talking about there, some of the things we're doing in our 20s and 30s that really aren't serving us, they're costing. It's like using a credit card when you don't have the money to spend. I think we have enough credit where it's like, okay, yeah, we have enough credit where it's okay, but at some point it stops being okay because of the interest that compounds, right? So I think of this health debt, and I really think of like perimenopause is it's a transition, like all transitions, moving, having babies, getting married, getting divorced, they cost more energy without supplying anything. So we now have this new energy demand And it just starts to really create that divide in our debt. And that health debt, I think of it like the Hunger Games a lot. Here we are out here thinking like, oh, it's just my body, it's getting older. But really, our body has shifted into this survival mode when it's in this health debt. It's like you're in the Hunger Games. And a lot of us are out there like District 1. Have you guys watched the Hunger Games, or am I throwing this out there in a random? Yes, watched it, read it.
I read
Like
all of them.
like watching it and being like, "Oh," like this big watching The Bachelor, like, "Oh, there's nothing I can do about it," just watching the drama unfold in our body. And then a lot of us type A women, and I was one of these, are like the president or whatever he's called, who's like, let's just make this harder. She doesn't have enough energy supply, so let's starve her more and let's go for a run on the beach. You know what I mean? Let's make it harder. When really, if we just start to look at these, like look at our body and the assessment of our life and be like, hey girl, like what do you need right now? And start to provide the energy supply back. A lot of times this transition becomes not perfect by any means. It's still a transition, but it makes life a lot easier. So the aim of the game in this health debt is really, how do I decrease the energy demand of my body and how do I increase that energy supply?
And I
Uh,
think when you're talking about energy supply, we're probably talking about a variety of things in terms
yes.
of our stressors,
Yep.
the stress of a calorie deficit. Maybe it could be energy supply in terms of the quality of food and calories that I'm consuming, not just
Absolutely.
calories, because I totally did Weight Watchers and I stuck with all the packaged foods that said it was 2 points, right? Or 100 calorie snack pack that just fit into the day, special K diet, all those things. So I think it's really important. And I love what you said is like kind of taking that internal evaluation, like, what do I need? And I feel that so many women in our age group, because we grew up in this 1,200 calorie, fat free, carbs are evil society in the different phases, right, of the decades, they almost fear eating more, but at the same time, they fear slowing down and not doing a workout. Like, I can't tell you how many conversations I
Ah,
have with people who are like, I'm feeling so tired, and my aura ring is telling me that my recovery isn't good and my sleep is bad and I'm really stressed. And so I skipped the gym today, but like I feel really bad. And like, I know, I don't know that I would make up for it this week. And I'm like, that's okay. You can take a rest day. It's okay to start to build up, to conserve some energy and just like chill out and go for a walk. So, are those the things that you were talking about in terms of this energy, or are there other things that you would include in that besides just calories and training? And then again, maybe some of these stressors of what we put on like our to-do list.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you nailed some big ones there, right? Obviously, when we're thinking about the energy supply and demand that we're really used to thinking about, we're thinking about fitness as a demand. And we're thinking about nutrition as like, yeah, is it providing energy? Is it not providing? So you're absolutely right in those areas. And the other areas that I think that are often missed is like a big opportunity for energy supply is pleasure and joy. And, I'm sure you guys are the same, where I have sat across the screen from so many women and been like, what do you do for fun? What's fun for you? Or when was the last vacation that you took? Or when was the last time you took an hour to just do something just for you? And I mean, I have kids, like, yes, they bring me joy, but I'm not talking about the joy you get from your kids when there's also responsibility attached to it. I'm like, what are you doing in your life that drives your purpose, that fills your cup? And we all know this, right? Like, there's, if you can remember when you fell in love last, you like don't even think about eating, like you're so filled with energy. When you remember, when you go to a concert and you're like filled with the energy of the people around you, we get energy from so many other places. So although I think the right fitness and the right nutrition can be a huge deliverable of supply and demand, I think we also have to look at the other areas of our life holistically that bring us joy or rob us of joy.
I love it.
So, would you say that of like, is there anything else that is overlooked? Like areas that are overlooked in terms of, essentially holding people back from
Yeah.
seeing results and feeling their best in that time of life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, ultimately, as we know, like the biggest energy demand in life is always going to be encompassed under stress, right? Where is our stress coming from? Is it coming from the food we eat? Is it coming in our life? So I think I almost think this is where, we've dubbed it midlife crises, but we hit this point in life, I think, where the body is like, I don't have the capacity and resiliency to handle bullshit anymore. So I'm going to be uncomfortable with the things that bump up against me. And hormonally, that's really supported. So when we're thinking about the other things that cost us a lot of energy, we have to look at our relationships, right? Our relationships in our life, our joy in our career, and the impact of stress by us choosing to abandon ourselves for the peace and joy and pleasure of other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's a huge time where you kind of have to be really vulnerable and open to your life changing in drastic ways. And
Hmm.
if you continue to run into the wall of resisting it and trying what you think should work because
Hmm.
it has worked for you in the past, and you don't evaluate all of the physiological changes that are happening in the body, you're going to end up really unhappy and probably in an unhealthy state. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of, it's becoming more known, which I love, and it's becoming more talked about on social media and, all of the new menopause and perimenopause, discussions and
Hmm.
famous people and all of that. But you have to evaluate your situation. Because I think,
Yeah.
like you said, yes, nutrition and exercise are the two places people look at the most. They're like,
Mhm.
oh, well, this is what I'm doing for my workouts. And I'm tracking my calories and my macros. And I removed gluten and I removed dairy. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, but what else is going on in your life? Like,
Yeah.
are you willing to accept and potentially change these huge stressors in your day to day? Like, what drains you on a day to day basis? That's the one question that I ask a lot of people because I don't think people think about it. I don't think they think
Mhm.
about when I walk into the office at work, I am on eggshells because it's such a toxic environment. Or
Yes.
when I come home and, my husband isn't understanding of the fact that I want to have the house clean or I am really tired from the day or whatever it might be. And I think that a lot of people just you power through, right?
Mhm.
And unfortunately, when we lose those sex hormone levels in that time of life, they're like your backup system to your
Yeah.
adrenals and to your stress resiliency. And so I always say, like, you kind of lose this bulletproof vest that you walked around with in your 20s and 30s. Girl, I
Yeah.
used to go out until like 2 a.m., eat McDonald's on the way home, and wake up at 6 and go to the gym. And like, was I fat? Yeah, I was fat, but I was okay in terms of like my energy. I have like a glass of wine now and I'm hungover for the whole day the next day. It's like you just lose the ability to tolerate things. And
Yeah.
it's and I think people get angry at that, and I get it, but also accept it,
Yeah.
right? When you can start to accept these things and start to look for areas, it just gets a little easier.
Yeah.
And instead of running into the wall of resistance over and over again and be like, why me? Why perimenopause? It's like, okay, but how? How
Yeah.
can I start to change this? How can I start to make improvements? Because you're right, life shouldn't be this awful every day. I'm unhappy, I'm bloated, I can't sleep, I don't like my family anymore. Like it doesn't have to be that. And I think
Yeah.
sadly it's being normalized to be that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I'd love for you to kind of, where do you start with your clients? Where do you
Yeah.
start with evaluation besides maybe nutrition and exercise? Or if you do start that, talk about that.
Yeah.
But what does this look like aside from, what brings you happiness in the day?
For sure. I think, I definitely start, of course, with like nutrition and movement. So I kind of look at these really clear steps, right? I think about all health, like whether we look at wild animals or we look at humans, like there's kind of those main four pillars of health that we always want to look at. So I like to kind of start with one little to do in each area if they have the capacity for all of that, and that's going to be sleep, like a good holding space for the quality of sleep and discuss like a discussion around what happens as we go to sleep so that we can really protect that piece. It's going to be around certainly around nutrition and yeah, removing foods that cost the body more energy than they provide, as well as eating enough and eating consistently, because I think a lot of people have really gotten away from that, and using food for what it's meant for. When the body is hungry, of course we want to fuel it, but let's not fuel the body with food when what it needs is a different energy supply. So, we definitely spend some time like really digging into nutrition. But when it comes to And I guess I'll address movement as well, because even as a personal trainer, I really feel strongly that when we're trying to heal a body, which is where most of us are if we're having symptoms, that we want to recognize that although building lean muscle is like the gold standard for how to protect our hormones in our bodies as we age, it's kind of a luxury item if we don't have that money, that energy to spend on it. So we need to just focus on functional movement every single day, walking those 7 to 10,000 steps, like stretching your body. I like to say yoga, but some people prefer stretching because I think a lot of people freak out. A lot of type A women freak out when you say, like, you need to do some yoga every week. So just focusing on functional movement that doesn't cost your body energy. So it really kind of digging into each of these key pillars. But with the pleasure piece, I like to look at all the areas of our life and just take a little bit of time to dig into each of them and almost rate them. Like how do you feel about your relationships? How do you feel about your creativity in life? How do you feel about your finances? And like actually dig into how do you feel about spirituality? Like let's rate ourselves on each of these areas and let's look at some of the lowest ones and figure out how do we increase these numbers week after week with just little daily tasks so that we can start to build another energy source beyond nutrition and functional movement and sleep to kind of support this piece at this time in life. So where I like to start with clients again is kind of taking stock of their basic foundations of energy supply and demand in the body. And I look to, kind of these four key health pillars that we have. We've already talked about them a little bit, where one, we need to look at sleep, like what are their sleep habits like? What can we do there? Is there one little thing that we can start to work on? We always look at nutrition and how they're eating, what the right fuel mixture is for their body. Is the food that they're eating costing their body more energy than it provides? So for me, there is always, an elimination process of removing things that are costing the body more energy. And also really visiting how we fuel, like making sure that when we eat, we're eating to fuel hunger in our body as the correct energy supply versus needing like love or attention, needing fatigue, like supplying the body with the right fuel source, which I think we get really confused about or abusive about at this age and for many decades when it comes to nutrition. Um, Movement is another one of those key pillars that I like to really look at, which is making sure that we are not spending energy on fitness that we don't necessarily have. So I do believe that fitness, like building lean muscle, is the gold standard for a body that's going to age as well as it can and provide. It's like a great investment, right? I always think of it like building lean muscle is like investing in a home. Chances are long term it's going to be a really great ROI for you. So we always want to be investing there. But if we don't have the money to invest in fitness, we really want to drive home functional movement first. So getting those 7 to 10,000 steps in each day if you have a sedentary lifestyle, stretching and expanding the body. So choosing movement that gives energy back instead of costing the body energy. So really scaling back to these basics. And then that kind of pleasure piece that we were talking about. There's a book, I don't know if you've heard of Regina Thomas-Hauer, Mama Gina, they call her. She wrote a book called Pussy, A Reclamation of Pleasure for Women. It's a great book. I highly recommend women, listen to it or read it. But she has this concept called rupturing. And I think it's a really important thing that I always work on with my clients, where you can't pour pleasure into a cup that is really overflowing with stress and sludge, right? Like it's everyone knows that, like as women, like we can't orgasm if we're stressed. We can't take a joke when I'm stressed. Like no, like nothing's funny that way at that time. So actively rupturing your body, whether that's like screaming in the shower or in a pillow or like singing really loud to a song in your car or just sitting in silence. Because a lot of people find it hard to sit in meditation, which I think can be a great way to release stress. And then looking to those pleasure pieces, really looking at, you know, how we're learning, what the purpose is in our career, how we feel about spirituality, creativity, relationships, social life in our life, and kind of rating ourselves out of 10 on how satisfied we are in those areas. And I think this is a really untapped resource of energy for women, because when we can start to isolate the areas that bring us the most joy and pick one little thing every day or every week, then we can get more energy without stressing so much about nutrition and fitness.
All right, if you're dealing with water retention, you're waking up puffy, your ankles or your wrists are really swollen, or you can't get your rings off, and maybe you're even dragging throughout the day, no matter how much water you drink, there's actually a good chance that you're not actually hydrating properly.
Exactly, because water alone is not enough. You need electrolytes, you need sodium, potassium, magnesium, because those things actually pull water into your cells. Otherwise, you're basically just flushing it out and wondering why you're still tired, you're still bloated, and you're still sluggish.
But here's the thing, most electrolyte supplements out there aren't helping you in any way because a lot of them contain things like natural flavors, food dyes, and maltodextrin, which can irritate your gut. And these things can also spike your blood sugar when you're trying to heal.
That's why we both started using Buoy. It's super simple, just trace minerals and electrolytes in liquid form. No flavors, no colors, no sugar, no sweeteners, and you squeeze it into whatever you are drinking: water, coffee, tea, smoothies, you name it.
And it's clinically backed by science too. So studies have shown that buoy helps you hydrate better, 64% better, in fact. And that's data coming from key blood and urinary markers, not just marketing fluff. And honestly, you can feel the difference. I've had many clients tell me their digestion's improved, they have less headaches, and they're better energy throughout the day.
And Buoy isn't just for people that go to the gym all the time and sweat a bunch. They actually offer a 35% lifetime discount for anyone that's struggling with chronic illnesses. Things like POTS, Hashimoto's, Crohn's disease, chronic migraines, and every autoimmune condition. They're really committed to making better hydration accessible to people who need it most.
I actually throw it in my coffee every morning because it's such an easy upgrade. You don't even taste it, but you're definitely going to notice if you miss it.
If you're tired of playing hydration roulette and want something that actually supports your body, you've got to try Buoy. It's honestly one of the simplest ways to feel better faster.
I love that. I often ask my clients or give them the kind of the challenge to find joy in
Mm.
your day. Because again, you can let all of the tabs in your mind and the to-do list and the go, go, go that you have to do for, family and work and the household and all of these things just take over. And
Yeah.
then you never really are happy with anything, right? You're just like going through the motions. You're not there mentally and emotionally, you're just kind of there physically. And so challenging people to find joy in their day. And I give them a whole list, right? Like pick and choose, whatever. It's all free. You don't have to like go on a vacation, every day. You can't do that, obviously. But finding that, and it's sometimes they're looking at me like, okay, I'm up for the challenge, but also this is going to be hard. I've never thought this way. But it also gives then something positive to focus on
Mhm.
instead of sometimes when we are so stressed about, I got to get my walk in because I got to get my 10,000 steps, like we almost like look at it negatively or as a chore,
Yeah.
right? I got to do this instead of I want to make this smooth transition because I really think that it can be a beautiful season for people if they're going through it with the right mentality, the right mindset, and focusing on their health instead of just what, again, we see on social media. And listen, I like the funnies, I like the comedy, but at the end of the day, for the woman who's walking through those symptoms, it's not funny.
Yeah.
And the poor husband on the other side is just dealing, with it probably at tenfold, because he feel like he's lost his wife. He doesn't know how to handle this. You got to feel bad for the guys too, in
Yeah.
some ways. But yeah, how do you coach women through taking this season of life, and owning it?
Yeah. I think, I mean, always having a deeper understanding of your body and just again that perspective shift is where I like to start. And Becca, I think you said, in our 20s and 30s our hormones are almost like that extra armor, I think you used the word, and I totally agree with you. And I also think that from puberty till perimenopause, when the ovaries start to retire, we've been hormonally hijacked as women. I think about estrogen as like these rose colored glasses that came on, and we're hijacked in the name of procreation and keeping the world going, of course, and prioritizing other humans over ourselves. And as that changes, that's an amazing gift. We now get to have entire month after month after month where we don't feel guilty about prioritizing ourselves over other people, where we actually get to access a very consistent self for an entire month. So I think when we can see that perspective of like, okay, this is a gift that's coming so that I can change, so that I can now spend the next 40 years of my life going after my dreams in a more masculine way, I think, right? Like we've, spent our whole lives as women where men being told we're emotional because of these hormones. And it's not entirely wrong because our brain shifts, things shift in our body. But now we get clarity. We actually get more confidence. We get more direction in ourselves if we embrace this time in our lives. And I think embracing it always means slowing down to hear what our body says so that we can start to trust her again and start to respond to her again. Because I think you mentioned it, Liz, where you said like getting people to slow down is one of the hardest parts, and I totally agree with you. It feels very anti-productive. But in fact, all here we are as women out in this world asking Olympic levels of output of our body and not treating ourselves like Olympians with having off seasons and massage therapists and, coaches in different ways. So slowing down to start to rebuild that connection with ourselves and learning to speak the language of our own body is one of the most empowering ways that I think you can live an extremely fulfilling second half of your life. But it takes work.
Yeah. And it's just a different type of work, right?
Yeah.
It's what you choose.
Yeah.
And a lot of people choose to be unhappy, and it's a choice.
Yep.
And they choose to play the victim or, oh, this is just what it is. Woe is me. I
Hmm.
have to take on all the responsibility because my husband doesn't want to help, or because, work's really busy right now. I don't have time to. It's like we all have the same 24 hours in the
Yeah.
day. Some people just choose to do something different with it. And it's a scary thing to make big change. And Liz and I have both gone through this. Like we both have the history of over exercising. Liz
Mhm.
did 75 hard twice. I competed in CrossFit and trained 2 hours a day for multiple years. And it's scary to not do that. And
Yeah.
it took a long time for me. I probably took a total of like 2 to 3 years to fully break up with CrossFit. Like I
Yeah.
kept going back to it. It was like a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, but maybe it won't hurt me this time. Maybe maybe I won't be mentally distraught this time and look like I'm
Mhm.
5 months bloated and or 5 months pregnant with my bloating." And every time it did the same thing. And it's just as soon as I got a little bit away from it, and I didn't feel completely better after 2 weeks of not doing it. I was like, "No, I need to go back to it because that high." It's like the high of doing these things that are almost detrimental to our body,
Mm.
whether it's dieting really hard or it's working out a ton or it's putting 80,000 things on your to-do list because then you think one day when you get it all done, it's gonna be it. Like,
Yeah.
that's gonna be the feeling that I'm looking for. And
Yeah.
it's just such a big shift for women to take on less. And I think the big thing is that it doesn't have to always look like less. Like the exercise that I do now, I still work out really hard. It's just 3, 4 days a week instead of 6 days a week. And
Yeah.
I don't do the same types of workouts, but it's still really hard for me. And I push myself in my workouts and with food. It just looks a little bit different now. Do I put a lot of effort into it? Of course I do. But I would also probably be putting a lot of effort into ordering out in terms of financially if I decided to do that every night or not eat throughout the day. And it's just, I think, again, coming back to it's just going to be different. And different isn't bad. It's
Mm-mm.
scary sometimes, but it isn't bad. And if
Mhm.
you have been struggling, like, what's the alternative at this point, girl? Like, where are we going with this? We just want to keep being unhappy and being that victim mentality and just living your life out unhappy? I don't think so. That's not the people that listen to this podcast. So if you could give, that big piece of advice to
Mm.
those people that are scared and feel like they can't step away from the life that they have probably lived to find this new, we talk about it. We say that it exists. We say that this, the end of the yellow brick road exists and
Mhm.
it's beautiful and it can be even more amazing than what
Mhm.
you are trying to create or, what you think you felt. What would you say to the person that's scared of
Mhm.
that?
Hmm. It's a really great question. And I think, I love when you said, like, I believe in that yellow brick road as well. Part of that yellow brick road is reminding women, and I feel like you've already done that today, that it's not like here we are out here feeling amazing in our bodies all the time and have no problems. Like it's that there's a self-acceptance concept to it and a real honoring of self in there. That's the yellow brick road. It's not it's not like we found this magic pill or we found the perfect workout or the perfect diet plan. And so now we have no worries. It's, it's this, again, I believe it's this real connection with our body. So to answer your question, I think that, oh, you know, hmm, I think that we often abandon ourselves as women and I think I said this earlier, but to not disappoint other people. And I think it was in the Untamed book by Glennon Doyle I read once. She said, whenever you have the opportunity to disappoint yourself or disappoint me. Like, do not disappoint yourself in your journey. And I think that is a really important piece that we start to look at if we want to be more in our lives as women and not just less on a scale, which I truly believe we all do at the heart of it. When we peel off what society has taught us, we just want to be more. Then we need to look at how can we take up more space in this world and not just grind all the time to get there.
I think that women are afraid to do that in most cases, right? Because I mean, we've been talking with some people on our podcast and then also just other moms, like, and I'm sure you can relate to this, like the psychology for children. How many times you're telling your children no, 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 no. Like I'm trying to actually take that out of my vocabulary because it's like ingraining into them, just like, you're being told, stop, don't come out of your shell. No, don't do that. Obviously, if it's something that's endangering or harmful for them, they're doing something bad, that's a different scenario. But, just to quiet them like in a store, right? But they're really just trying to give you their emotions about something and trying to communicate something to you. You're just not getting it, fully in adult words to understand. And so I think that subconsciously gets carried throughout so many people's lives that that's where they play small because they're afraid to come out of that shell and to play big and to say, no, I am awesome and I have this gift that I want to share with the world and I can take up that space. And so just giving yourself permission, I think, is one of the first things you have to do because nobody else can kind of give it to you, right?
Just
So
like,
I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. No, I do agree with you. And I think so that permission is such an important piece to start with for us. And also understanding that, again, I think Becky, you were saying it is hard. And it's like learning anything new is hard. Like you want to learn a new language, which is basically what we're being asked to do at this age as women, is learning the language of ourself at this time that nobody ever taught us. And frankly, not a lot of people are fluent in. It's like the evolution of learning a new language in your mouth feels weird for a while. So everything feels different. But if you're being really honest with yourself, and maybe here's my better piece of advice, every woman needs to take a minute and look at themselves in the mirror eye to eye and be real with themselves about, am I happy? Am I tying my happiness to productivity, or am I truly happy and this brings me joy? And when you can look at yourself that way and start to peel back those layers, I think that's when you start to hear the language of your body that we ignored for so long.
I love that. Perfect. So as we wrap this up, tell our listeners, where can they learn more from you and connect with you and all the good things on your podcast as well? Because I'm sure there's so many gems that they're going to want to come. There was so many gems in today's episode that they're probably going to want to come follow and learn more.
Thank you. Yeah, come and check out the Period Whisperer podcast especially if you're in this age box and you want to learn more specifically about, all of these aspects, and definitely listen to Liz and Becca's different episodes. They were both incredible, like top episodes on my podcast. So come and check those out. And I love to hang out on Instagram at Bria _period_whisperer. So those are really great places to start.